Bueno, pues buenos días a todos. Ha sido a gusto ver esto lleno a primera hora, sí, señor.
Well, thank you very much. It is a pleasure for me to see the theatre full of people. I'm going to introduce David Cuartielles. I'm sure many of you know him already, especially if you work in the industry. But for those of you who don't know him, if you've seen his bio in the EMPODERA Live website, you might have read that he works at the Malmö University. He's a lecturer in a department that is called Internet of Things and People. What a funny name, and we'll see why they chose that name and what implications that has. So David is a well-known person because he's one of the founders of the Arduino team. I understand that not many of you will know what Arduino is and what it means. So first of all, I want to ask David what that means, what it is, and then we can talk about education and the consequences of this type of projects. This type of projects have many more implications and consequences than one might suspect, especially if people in the industry remember how it came through, how it came about, and how it materialized. Well, Arduino is a platform. Well, I don't know if you can hear me okay, because the beard is in the middle of me and the mic, and I don't want any background noise to disturb you, so maybe I will put it here. I'll place it here, right? So it's perfectly comfortable because it's not disturbing, is not making any nuisance to my armpits. Well, anyway, Arduino is a platform that was born as an educational platform for technology lessons for artists. When I was working at the Interactive Design School in Malmö, Sweden, I met people who didn't know anything about advanced maths or physics or programming, so I had to think about how to create digital devices for them. So in these design schools, we know more and more that we are not there just to design hybrids or tables and chairs, but also all types of devices, hybrid devices. So I decided, well, I can design a platform, and I met my partner to be. So we created the Arduino platform, and that's how it came about. So we started in 2005, and we did printed boards for our students, 300 of them, and now we have produced more than 1 billion boards. And so that was a milestone in the heart of history. So as Yolanda was saying, that was a long time ago, but Arduino was not the first project of that kind. It was maybe the first such successful project, or the first one to become popular. But why do you think that happened? Why your project and why not other projects? Maybe the predecessors failed. Well, it was the first project that was really free, because Sun Microsystems released a microprocessor before that. But I think the difference came because the difference was because we empowered a group of people that were involved in designing that prototype and that project. And those were artists, and they work on a portfolio basis, not an exam basis. So they used that in order to communicate to the rest of the world what they did. So they needed more printed boards and circuit boards because that's how they worked. So we created a system in which other people manufactured them for us, and we then charged a royalty, and that way we could pay for the servers and a little bit of research on the meetings that we held. But after 5 years, it was a revolution, so we decided to establish a company, and now we have 100 staff in 5 countries. So the beginning was it was an educational project, but now Arduino is now has other applications, other case studies. Well, yes, Arduino, since day one, started to colonize other fields because Arduino is a tool that enables you to create any digital projects, and we have very simple control procedures for a workshop, for example, a mixing device in a bakery shop, So it is very simple but very accurate at the same time. So it's based in a principle which I call good enough computing, which means, well, good enough computing, enough for making it fast and more powerful, and that's enough. And that solves many problems. So that's why we started to create many things, but the biggest influence is in the field of education, because it really has changed how we work in the schoolrooms. Because it took place in a moment in time where people started to look inside the schoolrooms. It was a very cheap tool that could be used anywhere, in companies and in schools, and it could benefit both teachers and students and pupils in order for them to be able to prepare the activities for the schools. It is very simple, so it opened up for many possibilities. So it is used not just for engineering students, but for all students. We started to use it with engineering and design students at the university. But 1 year into it, I saw that we had some design students with a technical background. But we could use them too with, 14-year-old children. And of course, it depends on the pace, because in the university we have, for example, 3-hour courses, 3-hour classes, whereas in the school you have 1-hour classes normally. So we decided to adapt it to different settings. In Spain, in Argentina, thanks to the ACID, and Mexico. So we started expanding, and people started to use it, and people started to order the boards from all over the world, and we decided to hire more distributors, 45 all over the world. So you were talking about STEAM. Maybe not everyone knows it. It's an acronym for science and the arts. It's a combination of both things in both fields in the educational field. So the design itself, the design of Arduino itself, which is a modular design, like pieces and blocks that you can mix together. How has it changed the way we do things now in the educational field for all of us who are already grown-ups? Because in our generation, education was industrial, so to say, with one size fits all. We all studied the same things, we all learned the same. I know there's a difference between Spain and the Scandinavian countries, where they have more modular structures and they worked on a project basis. So how have you blended it all together? Maybe the tool is the result of the system, the Scandinavian system, or is it the opposite? Well, I studied technology 25 years ago. I'm quite young anyway. Don't get me wrong. So, as I say, I studied technology 25 years ago. Oh, what a surprise. A picture of me has been taken, so pretend she's not there. Well, so 25 years ago, there was like a ladder of contents that you started climbing. So you started with physics of materials and the calculations, and then you learned that the electrons behaved in the materials, and then you suddenly learned how to build an LED. But the connection was difficult to make because you really have to think in a very abstract way in order to materialize what you do in on a daily basis. So with Arduino, we changed the content ladder. So instead of climbing up the ladder, we started with trying to know what people already knew, and based on what they already knew, we started to build up what they could know. So suddenly people started to seize things, and maybe people had, for example, we organized a workshop with 50 people in Madrid in 2005, and people started coming over the days, and they learned about electronics. Instead of having fewer people every day, we had more people every day. That was the opposite, and the content was the same, the material was the same, it was standard material. So the only thing that changed was the pedagogy behind it. So we adapted the content to the student, and that was back in 2005. So I've seen a revolution, a transformation in the university. When I started my lectures at the university 20 years ago, I expected my students to know nothing about what I was going to explain. But now, people, teenagers, 14 years, know how to program. So and they mix with people who don't know nothing about programming when they reach university. So you have to teach all of them together. And the only way I've been able to handle it all was to organize the education based on projects, so that people who work on a project can benefit from each other's knowledge and maybe focus on other things if they have more advanced knowledge. That way we can blend each one's abilities and skills, and they can benefit from those who know more. But it is true that sometimes we're not used to changing the way we teach. So once we find a formula that works, we use it all the time. But people who come to our classes are changing all the time, so that's a very complex thing. So we have to rethink all the time how to teach them. The problem is that we don't get paid to rethink the way we teach. When I got to Sweden, we were paid €3 per hour in order to rethink the way we taught. But now it's €1 per hour. So if I have to teach, for example, data organization, and I don't know how to teach it, it is a challenge, because I'm not being paid to rethink the way I teach it. There was an article published in El País last weekend about how the educational model now, the current one, is favored by some people, but many other people are against it. So how to really bring about a system that is good for all. And it was criticizing that the fifth classroom model was not good, because we have a problem with technology. Technology is moving fast, and we're not moving as fast as it. So in everything I've read and analyzed and exchanged with governments, nobody has a really good solution. So the best way to adapt it was, I think, is the work based on projects. So the challenge is to train the teachers in order to make them able to work with projects. So you've been teaching in Malmo, but you've also been a visiting lecturer in many other places. So that really gives you some skills in order to compare how they do things in one place or another. And I don't know, what's your view on how we do things in Spain, in Latin America? There are many challenges. In Spain, for example, it was very easy to implement the project-based education at the Cuarto de la ESO, and thanks to the La Caixa Bank and also Telefónica Foundation. And the teachers have a curiosity that really goes beyond what they are paid for, and there are people who are really keen on making the students understand. So it was very easy for us to create very good technology-based projects with high success rate, 85% with them. In Sweden, the approach is top-down, And nevertheless, it was very, very complicated to make things work. So that means everything's a challenge. For example, in Costa Rica, technology and everything revolving around technology is done through a public-private partnership that really decides the type of content that is touched or seen in the schools. And there is a huge difference between the primary and the secondary schools. There are like 4,000 primary schools and a little bit over 1,000 secondary schools. So imagine that out of every 4 primary schools, you get 1 secondary school. And they really don't have the means to achieve what we do in other places, because you have maybe just 1 teacher and 4 or 15 computers for, I don't know, 40 students. So their contact with technology is maybe touching computer once every 2 weeks. So it is a very complicated challenge. So you have to really adapt the contents to it. But since we work globally, we need to work with companies, but you cannot have a uniform product. But that really poses a challenge, because if you really want something to be sustainable, you need to standardize it. If you really want to be environmentally friendly, you need to standardize it as much as possible and to try to outsource it close to where it's going to be distributed and used. But at the same time, you need to adapt it to the users. And it's a challenge if you wanted to make it sustainable and cheap. And that creates for many problems. And also because if you want to certify the contents or traceability or, well, how you do that? Project-based or any other type of contents, any other type of knowledge, how you distribute it, how you certify it. Yeah, the problem is, yes, you need critical knowledge on how to assess it. So many people try to implement what is called the rubricas in Spain, or like sections. But that is quite complicated. I mean, the signature contents. But maybe the way to solve it would be to try and make teachers exchange and share their knowledge and experiences so that maybe the system will be more balanced. This is done very well in some regions, for example, Catalonia and Valencia. They have a very well-organized system for teachers to exchange with each other to share knowledge. In other regions, it is much more complicated, let alone other countries. It can be eternally complicated in other countries. So those are the mechanisms that are most complex and that we need to solve. I'm not talking about the difference between public and private, of course. That's another challenge. Well, this is an open conversation, so if you have any comment or something to say or add or question, please feel free. You have a mic. There's a question over there. So as I was saying, Arduino, the project that we have created, what is its future? What does the future hold in store for it? Because there might be some similar projects for the educational field. Well, when we started Arduino, for the first 5 years, there was nothing like it. Nothing could be compared. Nothing compared to it, and especially nothing that covered everything, hardware, software, and contents. But now many people have copied the idea, and I think it's great, because if we wanted to make it sustainable at the long term, it was necessary. Arduino at the beginning was 5 people living in 5 different countries, and now we have 3 branches, 3 offices, and we work in a distributed way. There's one developer living in a cabin in Canada and people living in India, so we have people literally everywhere. So how do I seem in 5 years' time? I don't know. It's always a mystery. There's always fluctuations in everything that has to do with technology. Maybe we will disappear in 2 years' time. I hope we won't. But that's how things work. The good thing is that since it's an open system, it will always be there. We've been about to die of success, because since it was an open project, people have copied us in infinite ways. But we found a balance. So we created a full package of tools, and people discovered, oh, maybe I can manufacture cheaper than Arduino, but I can still use Arduino software. And our software is downloaded once every 5 seconds, so 30 million downloads. But the updates half of the updates are based on boards that we haven't manufactured ourselves. So people are using it, but they are adapting it to their own materials and sources and resources. Yes, go ahead. Good morning. Thank you. More than a question, it's a comment, because I am a teacher myself, and I wanted to thank you for your approach, because I am now working on platforms to teach English and Spanish based on info products and projects. And I'm really happy to hear that I'm not the only one who thinks that our educational system is obsolete and that we need to provide the teachers with that technology, but it needs to be affordable, and we need to teach them how to work with projects. Some parents are reluctant to let their kids work with projects because they just want a grade, they want a mark, 7 or 8. But children just memorize what they learn, and then they vomit, they repeat what they've been learning by heart. So I don't think like that, and I'd like to congratulate you for your initiative, because I think that's the future. It is somehow difficult, but if we want to train the citizens of the future, that is the path we have to follow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your comments and your reflection. As you were saying, too, education is always a hot topic. It is a hot potato. If we start pulling the thread, we could talk about it for ages. The type of projects, the type of methodology we use in our schools, it is part of the success and the failure cases of your project, Arduino, and other projects. Of course, we don't need to be, you don't need to be the strictest company, but by changing little things, but making little changes, you have discovered what worked and what didn't work. And that's part of the philosophy that is based on many other previous methodologies, etc. But by making things little by little, project by project, and little interactions, you've made a great thing. something that is really important too is that we sometimes are not able to foresee the implications or the consequences, the results of everything we do, because interactions in the free world are very difficult to measure. For example, we launched Arduino and we thought, well, maybe we can teach about the nature of electronics, how a sensor works. So we thought of it as the future of the interaction between persons and computers, and how to understand how an electron works. But for example, there is a little school in Aguascalientes in Mexico, and they teach people how to create montgolfier balloons. And they do it at regional level. They launch 40 balloons, and the kids have to design the balloon from scratch. And it is a huge impact in Mexico that we could never have foreseen to measure, because, for example, it allowed for the creation of the first satellite manufactured in Guatemala by a graduate of that polytechnical school, and he decided to design it because they wanted to take aerial views, aerial pictures of Guatemala. And they have just conducted the stress tests in Scotland, and it is due to be launched in March. And they built it thanks to Arduino. And it was done entirely with students, engineering students. So this is something we could have never foreseen 15 years ago. Of course, we need to coexist with other projects, and this is the only way we can make a revolution. So it's great. But the real data can be seen at a political level, investment level, at the teachers level, and it can also help shift the decision on how to organize the structures. For example, when a government says, well, all schools in my country have to have the same equipment, but if a school receives, I don't know, 1,000 computers, but then teachers don't know how to use them, it's a problem. Well, I've been using Arduino for a few years, and I wanted to say I am really grateful because it helped me solve a problem I had. I am not an engineer, I am a pharmacist. I needed Arduino to know when I could expect a product to arrive. So I started, I researched a little bit and I used Arduino, and it wasn't complicated at all because I got the help of the Arduino community, and that is what I value best. The great community, the large community of users that can help you as soon as you have any question or doubt. Yes, we have 846,000 registered users, and so you learn the basics, the foundation of the code. And if you need something else, there are lots of libraries and users that can help you. And you really need to study what you need. And that's great for me. That was fantastic for me because I am not an engineer, so I don't have an engineering background. And that was really helpful. So don't be afraid to use it. Dare use it. Thank you for mentioning it. Yes, the community is important because of two reasons. When you develop a tool or whatever, a community helps you grow, But in the field of education, there are different discourses. The Arduino community has problems, gender issues and other issues like any communities in the net. I teach design, and 80% of my students are female students. But when I go to the community, just 20% of the registered users are women, and I don't know why. Maybe because, I don't know, it's a hostile forum, it is a hostile discussion forum, or because, I don't know, the synergies are not good enough for women to feel at ease. In other cases, we have created 2 different forums, one for men and another one for women. So we are now trying to navigate all these problems and all these new things. There are many theories, technofeminisms, other types of feminism in order to try and approach that problem and solve it. We try to create clusters based on interest groups to try and support people that way. And then we have extra communities, many extra communities. We have a Spanish-speaking forum, because the main forum is just English, but then we have many more in Chinese, in Spanish, in French. And there are, in addition to that, many more sub-communities, many smaller communities that have decided to become independent and create their own group. So it is very difficult for me to give you a piece of advice for a specific problem, but there are many communities you can look for the solution in. So I'm glad you found the solution to your problem, and I hope many more people come to us and find the solution in our community, because the bigger the community, the better we can serve the world. So yes, the community is one of the keys of any open project or open source software. So it is interesting to see cases like yours, Antonio. So we could talk about this for ages, and we can keep on talking about it later to that bar. But well, can you talk about the bar where you decided to, where you made up the name Arduino when you register an open source software in any platform? We have to use a platform, and in 2005, the main platform was SourceWord. So we decided to register it, and we decided to name it Cappuccino because we drank a lot of cappuccino. But we couldn't name it that way because, well, cappuccino could not be used because it was already being used. Cappuccino, macchiato, marroquino, espresso was already in use because Java was the platform. So we decided to go and look for another platform, a German platform, and it was full of cafe names too. So we were looking at the website, we were doing all the registration process and typing it, and we still couldn't find a name. So we couldn't use cappuccino, moccatino, espresso. So we decided, hey, the bar where we came with this, where we came up with this idea was called Arduino. And my partner, who's Italian, said, well, Arduino is a very common name in Italian. I'm sure it's not registered. So we decided to register it in Berlioz and German platform, and it worked. So the funny thing was that the cafeteria was named Arduino after the first Italian king. And everything was called Arduino around it, the bar, the square, and the things around the square. So we decided to organize a pilgrimage. If you want to be really if you want to be freaks or geeks, you can pilgrim to that, to the cafeteria and the square. You can go to Tarragona to see the real Mazinger Z at a natural size, or you can go